lines to microwave system. So I'll let Craig speak about that a little bit. The biggest changes after doing additional studies and remote work is we're looking at going from a proposed 2-site system to a 3-site system. We had talked once before about building a 2-site system and then temporary, maybe a year or two down the road, go to a 3 or 4 site system. But this particular proposal with 3 sites would be ideal. It would be the system that would pretty much give us 100% coverage throughout the communities. It would consist of a repeated system. And again, the numbers you're gonna hear tonight are gonna change. I'll tell you that right now because these are all base numbers on the high side with the most amount of work that would absolutely have to be done. We're hoping that those numbers come down a good amount as we put this infrastructure together. So we're looking at a site on the existing new cell tower that's up, a site in West Warren and the West Warren Fire Station, and a site, existing tower on Southbridge Road by the Orchards. Those would be the 3 primary sites in town. They would function together through a microwave system and would provide the coverage that we want. You'll hear in the report that we are looking at anywhere from in the 70 percentile to the mid 80s percentile for portable coverage right now. I've said that's my biggest concern, both police and fire, that we've identified through this project. It's especially on the police side with what they deal with on a regular basis. When you can't rely on your portables out of the cruisers and stuff, there's a big problem there. So, that's the main thing that we're trying to shore up. So with that, I guess I would, unless Chief Millett has anything to add,
I have some questions.
Sure.
Before we go into a presentation, go into the details too much, because I'm a little bit lost here. I mean, in 2 months, we've gone from not needing anything to needing the sum of money. So explain to me a little bit and explain to the voters why in 2 months we went from not needing anything to needing this kind of money.
Well, I guess I would say that the systems that we have been existing for many, many years. They have been sufficient to the point where we've dealt with them, we've used them. The technology has changed tremendously with regard to how these systems operate. The old adage was the higher the better. That's why ours is up on Coy Hill with the technology that we had. For many years, the higher up you are, the more coverage it's gonna cascade down into the town. However, the technology has changed quite a bit. Quite frankly, again, especially on the police side, these systems should not exist on phone lines because they are temperamental and they can go out, from time to time. They have had some work done back in, I think, 2012. I think we had talked about that once before. The fire department repeater has basically functioned with very little maintenance to it other than changing batteries and doing, a yearly checkup on it and stuff like that. It's been sufficient for us. With the recent failures that have happened, again, all of these components are what we would call end-of-life equipment at this point. You can't get parts for them. There's issues with maintenance on them. So again, these are the systems that are designed to last 10 to 15 years. All of them are well over that at this point. So they need to be replaced. We've had some massive storms roll in that has damaged the equipment recently, has caused major, this is where this has come from very quickly because of the storm issues we've had. We've had them knocked out on 2 or 3 different occasions. So I guess to answer your question, why it's come up now, because we've had 3 failures now in that very short span of time, where we weren't seeing these types of storms roll through for a very long time. We dealt with it, but we moved on. But we've had 3 hits now in a very short period of time. So basically, that's why it's come up very quickly.
I understand we've had 3 hits in a short period of time. I also know we've had a heck of a lot worse storms than this come through and not felt this kind of impact. So really, what's the root cause driving this? I mean, I understand we're behind the times. Totally agree. All right, that's not what I'm questioning. I'm questioning how we can go in a matter of 2 months from not needing anything, supposedly, because I've been on Selectmen for 3 years. I was on the Finance Committee prior to that. And a month ago, or a month and a half ago, when it was first brought up, it was the first time I've ever heard that we need to invest in that infrastructure.
Well, again, we've had...
I know I've been having radio problems for a while now.
Yeah, again, you know, we have other things that were on capital planning. We haven't had capital planning for a couple of years now, so we're kind of out of luck with that. You know, we've had multiple projects. We've tried to push for capital planning. These weren't giving us a problem at that time, so they didn't take a front priority. But again, because of the issues we've had recently, the equipment is obviously aging. It's taking more and more of a hit each time, and it's not recovering from it. So eventually, we may take a hit that it's going out. So to answer your question again, it's because of what we've seen, the equipment and the age of the equipment, it's no longer able to handle, you know, this type of stuff. So that's why it's come to the forefront now. I mean, you know, I can't answer it really any other way.
And I think the distance we're traveling now to communicate with Rutland, Craig might be able to answer that better than me. I don't know if that's a problem with the radio systems too.
Currently,
Oh, yeah.
the way it's being, what we call backhauled to the system, isn't optimal. The new system actually addresses that concern as well.
Well, isn't optimal is one thing. I mean, I don't want to go from, you know, driving a Volkswagen to driving a Porsche, right? It's, you know, in my eyes, what do we need to get this system back up and functioning reliably?
You're not going to.
I don't believe that. I've been in business for 50 years, all right? I've run many projects in my career, and I've never seen anything like this come down the line. And, you know, a lot of my stuff is machinery and whatnot, but they have to keep running. I don't go and replace every component on the floor at one fell swoop.
So we've never had a replacement of our systems, ever, systematically. So again, these systems are very old. I understand it's a sticker shock price, and again, we're gonna get into that, but, you know, and I'm certainly here to answer any other questions, but, you know, I don't think I'd compare it to a Volkswagen versus a Lamborghini or anything like that. This is, you're talking about a very old and outdated system to a new and up-to-date system, a complete rebuild from the ground up. So, could we save money and could we replace the existing equipment with new equipment? We could, but is it gonna be optimal? No, we're gonna be stuck with a system that's a standalone repeater like we have now with a new repeater and probably a new antenna. Is it gonna fix the problem with us not being able to talk in 20% of the town? No, it's not. You know what I'm saying? So this is an infrastructure project. It's to cover all of the gaps that we've missed over time and time again. So that's what we're trying to relay to people.
I think my system had an update in what, 2012?
2012, I believe that you guys did some work
We
for
had
it,
some
yes.
new repeaters put in.
Yeah.
I understand we need to march forward, right? But I can't go in front of the town to support something, I mean, of that magnitude during these times right now. I don't know where my funding's gonna come from 6 months from now, right? I don't have a crystal ball. That's a significant amount of money that we could be using. We could use this money to buy a new fire truck.
I agree
You know,
with
we could use this money to buy 5 cruisers.
you.
You know, we could use this.
I agree with you, but they're not gonna do us any good if we can't talk to each other with them, so.
Yeah, but Adam, not talking to one another doesn't happen overnight.
Well, again, in our experience in the last few storms, we've had major failures. I can't tell you anything else about that we have had a significant drop that hasn't happened before until we've had these major issues with just recently. I would have brought that to you. I mean, I've been on I've done capital planning for many, many years since I've been here. I've always brought projects forward. I don't have another answer besides to say that. If I had had a major infrastructure problem before, I would have brought it to capital planning. And we would have discussed it, but we're there. This is the deal we were dealt at this point. So we're trying to figure out the best way to address the system with the amount of money that we have. I mean, there are ways to finance these things. This doesn't have to be a full-out, you know, I mean, we can do those things if we have to, but we're just bringing this to the board. I mean, like I said, I'm just trying to explain what we need and where we're at. What the town decides to do with it is up to them, but, you know, this is, again, representing a complete rebuild of the system.
Okay, continue. So we'll have my questions answered.
I'd be more than happy to answer. I'm trying to answer as best I can, I really
I
am.
don't like to be put in a position with no prior knowledge of this magnitude.
I-
To be
That's
fair,
the bottom line.
to be fair, Mr. Chairman, to be fair, I don't think anybody prepared for this, because it's one of those things, you don't realize it's happening until it's already happened, and it's probably too late.
I disagree.
And then you have to deal with it. The town didn't have a maintenance program set up, correct?
It was basic maintenance that we did, but no preventative maintenance program or whatnot. But I mean, in all fairness, you know, I gotta say, I mean, we've had projects that have been, you know, sitting on capital planning for 8, 9 years that no one's touched. So this is a bigger problem than all of that. I'm not saying that, would I have loved to address it a different way, but unfortunately, we're here to talk about the issues that we are having right now. And I'm just, especially on the PD side, from, as I said before, I am worried about their portable capabilities at this point. And I don't know how to fix that.
Now,
I'm
one
worried
of the
about it
antennas-
too, it's just that coming within 2 months is, I think we should have had some foresight to bring this to head and say, hey, we have problems with the communication system, we must have known this at some point in time before the total failures, right?
Yes.
And
We were
bring it-
having problems before that.
Bring it forward so that we can deal with it and react to it. Having it at a critical state, I mean, we're forced into doing stuff that we could have planned for.
Again, I understand what you're saying, I totally understand it, but, this is where we are with it now. We've never had failures on the fire side up until just recently. I mean, we just hadn't happened before. So, I mean, clearly this is the first time we've had an indication that there is some serious problems. I mean, ideally, we would, I wish, years down the road, we had a better infrastructure built, but it just wasn't a priority at the time, and now we're kind of trying to compensate for that. And I think the police have a bigger need than we are, because they've been having more problems, but it makes no financial sense to address one and not the other at the same time, because you're dealing with the same towers and the same locations. I guess, again, I'm just bringing the information forward. I mean, what the town wants to do with that, then that's totally up to them, but, unfortunately, we don't have finance committee, we don't have capital planning, we don't have the boards and stuff to even talk about these types of things, unfortunately, regardless of whether it was 2 months ago or 2 years ago, I mean, we're kind of left to present just to the board.
But in lieu of not having capital planning and not having the FinCom, selectmen become those that has to assume those roles.
Mhm.
And selectmen hasn't heard about it
Mhm.
until recently.
Yep.
So whether FinCom was there, whether capital planning was there, I still don't think we would have heard about it.
Again, we weren't having the problems we were having. It wasn't an issue at the time, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes, you may.
Adam, you know what, I think it really simply comes down to, we've had previous conversations at prior selectmen's meeting, and it was a hefty number, but the number thrown out was around $320,000, which is a bitter pill to swallow. But that's what everybody was kind of,
Yeah, I understand that.
and then it came through 5 minutes ago to this, and it's now $546,000, almost $250,000 more.
Yep.
I think that is basically the boards, we were in sticker shock.
Well, you
We're talking
understand,
about a whole nother ballgame here, Adam.
I understand that, and let me just say that we saw that number the same time that you guys saw that number. It was forwarded to us, and it was given to you guys. So I went through the same thing. We had a meeting prior to this that we sat down to discuss what was going on here. That's why we asked Mr. Gagny to be here this evening to explain a little bit more in detail as to why that number will more than likely change and what that encompasses in the project. So please don't think that this was anything that was, we weren't trying to, pull the rug out from anybody, okay? This number came to us 2 hours ago, and it was forwarded to the
It's
board.
because, you did have conversations saying that there was gonna be maybe some addendums and this and that, and it was good. And I think the general consensus is, well, it goes from 320 to 340.
Correct.
It's a viable figure, and you can make the pitch to sell it, but to go from 320 to 546.
And I agree, and like I
Talk
said.
about pulling the rug out from underneath us, Adam.
And again-
That's why everybody here is dumbfounded.
Well, again, Mr. Richard, all due respect, we just saw the number ourselves.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to pull a rug out
No,
from
I
anybody,
understand
okay?
that.
That's why we asked, this was not planned, we asked Representative from Rutland to be here this evening for that exact reason, okay? And they provided that. So the number we had no intention of coming in tonight and saying, oh, by the way, we knew about this 3 weeks ago, we didn't tell you that. That's
No, that
not
was
what
not my
happened
intention,
whatsoever.
as you
So,
know, Adam.
no, I know, I'm just trying to say, I just don't want you to think that that we tried to do that. That was not the case whatsoever. So we're just reacting to, what the overall study, showed and what they're suggesting. So, If I may, can we turn it over to him to explain a little bit about it, please? Does that be possible? Mr. Craig Gagnon, please.
Good evening. Craig Gagnon, Modular Communications. So what you gotta remember is that number that you're seeing right now is a rough order of magnitude. We're very early in the stages of kind of figuring out what this picture is gonna look like. So we can't really determine final pricing until we have some answers with regards to like the usage of the industrial communications tower up off of Southbridge Road. There's some details there that we don't have, so we don't know. There's a couple other details that we don't have either. So it's really what it comes down to is think of it as a puzzle. You've just opened the box, poured it out onto the table. We're just starting to put the edges together. This is the edges. Anything in a rough order of magnitude pricing is generally done all at retail price, whatever the manufacturer's suggested retail price is. And then we start whittling that down depending on what's actually needed. This is at worst case scenario. For example, we're trying to figure out a way to get from the water tank or the industrial tower to the west end of town to Station 2. So whether we do that with microwave or we have fiber going all the way up. So if we have fiber all the way up to the site, we eliminate about $30,000. So as you can see, it really, once we start answering these questions by engaging other vendors that do things that we don't, we start to figure out more puzzle pieces till we get to that final picture. And that's when we'll end up with a final real penciled in number when we have answers from all the other parties involved.
So this is like an à la carte menu for now?
Not-
Until you figure it out?
A la carte's kind of a tough idea to kind of grasp with that. If all the other vendors said, well, we don't have that ability, this would, then we'd just discount the price to whatever state bid pricing or whatever bid pricing that we have at the time, WISCA, NASPO, anything like that.
But you can pick and choose off of this menu, so to speak?
It's really not that simplified.
No, I'm sure it's not.
But what it would come down to is, like I said, if we had knowledge that fiber optic goes directly from that site to West Warren, we wouldn't need the microwave link to backhaul down. So we know that that could go. But the base pieces of the system, the equipment that's at 3 sites, that's all pretty much set in stone. You need a power system, you need a backup system, you need the repeaters, you need what they call a combiner, which allows everything to talk up to the antennas on the tower. Those are the things you absolutely need. There's some stuff in here that we're not sure if we need yet until we engage those other vendors.
What do we need to do in order to stabilize this system so we don't go through the outages right now? I mean,
So,
I know we've had some failures on generators and stuff like that. Those are easy
unfortunately,
fixes, right? What does it take to get me back into a functioning state again? And then plan on the future on where we want to go. Because, I mean, we're talking all kinds of stuff here, right? I mean, we're talking about, David's been talking about a new safety complex, I mean, stuff that we need to invest in, into the town. And this is certainly not gonna help us get there. So what do we need to get to the point where we're reliable, we have some reliable communication? We've dealt with the dead zones for years. And yes, it's a safety issue, I understand that. I'm fully behind the fire and the police department, but the money has to come from somewhere, right? And we don't know where we're gonna be 6 months from now. Right? And to take all the money we have from the town and invest in a project like this doesn't leave us room for anything. So what does it take us to get stable?
again, your
Get us
current-
back to 2 months ago.
Again, your current system, sir, is completely end of life. None of the parts are made anymore. So
I've
that
worked
part,
projects long enough to understand that statement and what it means, so don't take me there.
I don't
No.
understand what you're saying, sir.
We had a lightning strike on one of the antennas, correct? Is that what it was?
I believe they have lightning
Verizon.
straight on Southbridge.
Yes, the
By
Verizon
the
equipment got
orchards,
blown up.
yes.
That's the next part of this, is the Verizon telephone lines that especially the police side rely on. Those are lines that are upwards of 60 years old. They've been around forever. Another problem with that is Verizon is starting to deprecate those lines in other communities because they've started to run fiber. So when they roll that project down here, it very well could be the next time you have an outage like you had tonight and you call them up to fix those lines, they just disconnect them. And they have no bones about it. They've done it to other communities in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And we've had to come in and do an emergency workaround.
So, Mr. Chairman, to answer your question a little bit too, you know, what you have in front of you is the end-all build of a rating system, as we've said, okay? Are there things that we can do in the meantime to keep the price down? Yeah, there are things. You know, we could look at a two-system, you know, we could do that with the opportunity of building a third system, okay? We could do that, all right, to keep the cost down. We could finance the particular project, because again, there's a very good likelihood that we could end up not paying the cost to Rutland's going for the next few years. We could go put that. We've been pretty much told that that's pretty much, you know, we can not count on that happening, but it's a good likelihood we could, that may happen. So again, there are options that we could look at to take the burden off the taxpayers as much as possible, with different payments, different ways to finance that. What we put together tonight was not to get everyone upset, and again, you know, I just go back to the fact that we didn't see the sticker price at the same time you did, so that's what we're talking about right now. But yes, could we operate with a two-site system with the ability to putting a third site online down the road and keep the cost down? We could do that, but it's not necessarily ideal, you know? What you have in front of you is what will fix everything at one time without any other pieces falling out of the puzzle, I guess is how to explain it. So by putting, again, could we put a new repeater up on Coy Hill? Could we put a new antenna? Sure, we could update it and do that and spend money on it, but it's still the same system, and that's the problem. So we're trying to present something to the board to fix the entire program, how we, project. How we get there is a decision the town is gonna have to make. You know, so we
But
can.
The town needs options, Adam.
What's that?
The town needs options.
I understand that, but I'm just saying to you that if we take those options and we do a two-site system right off the bat, okay, it will be in the $320,000 range, all right? Probably will be in that range, but it will not provide all of the talking capabilities. It just won't, because it doesn't have that third site in West Warren to capture some of that area. So, again, there are decisions that we can make. It's not like this is all you have to do. There are things we can look at, but it's not going to fix the entire problem. That's all I just want everyone to be aware of. There's still gonna be those dead zones in certain areas. This is a complete radio build from the ground up. I mean, communities have to go through these things from time to time. Whether or not we were with Rutland, again, I'll say, we would be facing something similar to this if we had our own standalone dispatch. We'd still have to fix our systems. They still would be antiquated. The only difference is we would have had to pay for the study on top of everything else, which we got through Rutland, which is what we're talking about tonight. So we're trying very hard not to anger anybody. We're trying very hard to not feel like we're pulling the rug out from anybody. That is not our goal whatsoever. We're just trying to react to the problems that we've had recently and try to fix this somehow, some way. I just don't want anyone irritated or upset, because believe me, I'm all for capital planning. I've been working with capital planning, finance, and select board for many years now, and never had, you know, a project, something like this come forward like this. But again, we're reacting to the situations we've been put in the last few months.
I think we were at, oh, sorry.
Have you looked up any, like, grants that might be out there?
Yep.
Anything?
Yep, so there, I mean, again.
Something to bring down the cost.
Grants are tough. I mean, they're, you know, they go in cycles. You know, Rutland applies for a ton of grants on our behalf, and the other towns, they're successful with some. They're always competing with other regional places that are putting, you know, things together. So, yes, we are certainly looking at all those, you know, options as much as we can, but there's nothing on the table right now that, you know, is going to help us in this particular situation immediately, before town meeting or anything like that. So we're just trying to bring forward something to, you know, for the board to you know, to start working on this issue. I mean, we're always gonna try to pursue grants. I mean, I've put in grants every year to the assistance to firefighters and the DCR grants and everything, and sometimes you hit on them, and sometimes you don't, you know? I mean, it just, the money isn't once what it was into those programs. So, yes, we continue to try, but, you know, we haven't had anything come to light or in process right now that's infrastructure related.
If I could
So-
interject on the grant money side of things. Unfortunately, the state of Massachusetts, the way they handle grant money from the feds, save for the AFG grants, is it's them first, and then they trickle out whatever's left. It's not a competitive grant system like most other states, so that's part of the problem you have when you do grant submissions to the state. It's whatever's left from what they use for their EOPS and EOTS section of radios and dispatching and patrol cars and things like that. So it's not a competitive system in the state to really get what you need.
And I'll actually add something too that's been irritating me quite a bit in the last few years with these types of grants. And unfortunately, I think they've changed the scope of how they do things. They've become more of a, how do I word it? Towns like ours, where we pride ourselves in maintenance in terms of our apparatus and our capital planning for, as, a couple of people in this room could attest that we have done, many projects with our pneumatic equipment, with our turnout gear, with this over the years, and we've cycled through those things, and we've been successful with that. The problem is that the grants seem to be going to the towns that don't do that stuff. And they're basically forced to give it to them because they find out that the grant comes through and they're 2 or 3 years out of compliance with a piece of equipment that shouldn't even be on the rack anymore. And it's almost like the towns that are doing it are getting punished for staying up on top of their responsibilities. And that's very frustrating for someone like me, because it wasn't like that before with the AFG. I'm seeing towns that are getting full-on SCBA equipment because theirs is 5 years out of date. That should never happen, ever. You know what I mean? And it's very frustrating when you're staying on top of things and getting things replaced the way a town should be doing it on their own, or at least planning to do it on their own. These towns seem to be relying more on complacency and getting it because, oh geez, we have to help these people because they're 10 years out of date. And that's not the way these grants were supposed to happen. And it seems to me like that's what's happening more and more, and it's a little frustrating. Because if they see a truck that, a town that's going for, I put on, for that 1975 truck I've been trying to replace for, 9 years now, I'm gonna get beat out every time by someone that still has a 1955 Power Wagon as a brush truck. I'm just using an example, but it's frustrating because we try like heck to keep our equipment on the road and maintenance, and we get beat out because other towns aren't necessarily pulling their share and planning for these types of things. And again, this is one that we weren't prepared to take a big hit on, and I'll be the first person to say that I wish, I wish we had some problems, so to speak, so we could, but it was never a problem for us. We never had an issue with it. We just dealt with it over the years, and unfortunately, due to these couple of things, it's come to light that, the problem is, it's not addressable with just replacing the current equipment that's out there. We have to have a better plan to start moving forward with new technology.
Now, you're talking about a 2-system instead of a 3-system. How much of a price difference would it be? for
So the
2
original number you got is based on a 2-site system. Somebody had mentioned the other number.
$320,000 roughly.
That's a number based on 2 sites.
Okay, this is based on, what we have is 3 sites.
This is a number based on 3 sites.
Right.
With some assumptions, again, because we don't know what other moving parts we have here. Now, the other part with this system is we noticed with your present systems, there's no redundancy. There's no real backup system. There's no real backup power. There's nothing to hold over. So when we build a system, I'm also a firefighter EMT myself. So when the owner of my company and myself, when we sit down to design a system, we want to make sure that it meets like NFPA standards or as close to NFPA standards as we can. That means having proper holdover times if AC power fails and your generator fails. So we have battery banks in there. Are they a little more costly up front? Yes. Do they save lives? Yes.
So is this
you
number
gotta balance that
including
out.
new generators too?
We don't provide generators. So whatever generators you have to, we try not to get involved in that. That's considered civil work. So you get an.
I'm just trying to get the scope.
Yeah,
And-
you get an electrician, anything like that, and they can provide that. We don't have electrician services under our umbrella, so we don't provide quotes on that. It's not something that we're experts at. So any quote we give would be kind of like
So
throwing a
you're
dart
just
at the
strictly
dartboard.
doing battery backup?
Yeah, battery backup is typically what we do, and that is to keep holdover for at least up to 4 hours while power is restored or a generator is brought to the site.
Which is what we currently do with our site on Coy Hill. It's
Right.
a battery, has a battery backup, and it has the gentleman up there has a generator, either he provides it or we bring one up there.
But again, that's private property, and
It's private
he,
property.
at any
yes.
point, he could sit there and tell us to go plant. Not that he ever would, but.
Yeah, I don't ever see that scenario happening, but yes, it's
He's
a
a great
risk,
guy.
it's a risk you run on private property, yes.
Yeah.
That did happen to the police years ago, where they had a system on private property and the relationship soured, and it was very tough to access that equipment.
Yeah, we try to, when we design systems and pick sites, we try to pick sites that are either town-owned or where you have a solid lease that you can, exercise rights with. We try to stay away from private property as much as we can.
We have calls into Industrial Communications, which is the Southbridge Road new cell tower. I'm waiting for some responses back, and again, to reiterate, the price is based on changes that could happen due to that. In my recollection is when that tower was put up, they offered us free space up on that. At the time, we didn't think it was gonna do anything for us, because, again, not even knowing what technologies were out there at this point. Higher is not necessarily better anymore, and Craig can certainly speak to that. With the new microwave systems, it doesn't have to be high up on the hill anymore. It can cover in a much different way. So now that we think that could be a viable option, we have to have the conversation of, are they gonna give us free space? If that's true, then the price comes down. Are they gonna provide a housing for us? If that's true, the price comes down. So all these things are different factors that Mr. Gagny has talked about that will affect the price at the end of it. We're just trying to get those answers as quickly as possible.
So I understand that this is the rough
Correct.
pricing. The absolute.
Exactly.
Worst case scenario,
Yep.
we have to replace every screw bolt, everything.
Yes, and again, that's why we're trying to have this conversation tonight, so that you're aware that this may not be an accurate price at all.
At what point will you be able to give us a better number?
So as soon as, and we had this discussion earlier, and again, it's, when I said the puzzle, take the puzzle, dump it on the table, and you start with the edges, that's kind of where we are right now. As we get information back from Mass Broadband Institute for being able to backhaul fiber optic from, either of the two sites on Southbridge down to West Warren, that would eliminate a microwave link that we were gonna use to backhaul down to, say, the police or fire departments where they do have fiber optic. So if that's the case, of course, that's a savings off of this number. So as soon as we have all these different other vendors that we have to rely on to start penciling this down, then we know what equipment. We have a final equipment list. Once we have a final equipment list, we can start to pencil in where the discounts start to happen, in terms of your bulk purchasing and things of that
So
nature.
how long do you think that would take to get that number to?
It really depends on other vendors, getting back to the chiefs.
We're gonna be working on this very quickly. Again, I apologize, this is not something that we wanted to come in here and think we're trying to strong arm anyway. That's not the case at all. We're just trying to present what we have for you at this point. We will be working on this as quickly as we possibly can to get those answers, and try our best to figure this out as we go. I mean, we were not planning on having this fall, this type of situation happen. It just wasn't
No,
foreseen.
We're here now,
Yeah.
we gotta deal with it. Just, again, and you guys were probably shocked when you sat there and looked at that
I
number
had
and
the
said,
same reaction.
"Whoa."
I had the same exact reaction that the chairman did. I get it.
And I have to say,
It's
I'm in the
frustration.
wrong line of work because
Yeah.
labor.
It's not as good as you think, but.
I mean, you gotta understand, I mean, you're paying, at the end of the day, you're paying people to climb towers. I mean, that's not gonna be a $16 per hour job. I mean, it is what it is. There's climbing involved, there's a lot of technical aspects that are involved.
Right,
so-
we know that, we
Yeah,
just.
it is what it is. I mean, like I said, I saw the price of it, and again, that was before I had a conversation with Craig and talked about the other factors that are playing in there. And, I had, chest pain for a few minutes, the same as Chief Millet, I'm sure, as the board, okay? And again, we're all going through that right now, but we're trying to deal with the problem that we have and seeing what we can do to fix this that doesn't financially, destroy the town. And again, I'll tell you right now, I've been having many conversations, not just about radio projects, but fire trucks and police cars and everything. And most of these towns now, a lot of them are financing this stuff. They're not buying it outright. It's much more advantageous to do these things where they can get a good, price range. They can renegotiate, different percentages and stuff. So there are options out there to do this. Do we have to do 100% build out right away? No, we don't. But we have to know if we don't do it, what the lack of, what issues we may still have in some places. So it's about understanding how it's gonna play out,
Yeah.
And I think we were having the problems, that's why the grant was written for the study.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's
And
where
then
the
study
money
came
came,
out.
that's why E911 approved the grant to begin with, because, we started having problems, they put the grant in on behalf so we could start figuring out that stuff. Did we expect it to fail fully a couple times? No, they were having reception issues, that's how everything came about. There's a lot of things that play in factors in that, foliage, weather, didn't necessarily know the scope of what the whole issue was of that. So all those things play a part in it.
Well, I know we're in a current state right now, understood. How we got to that state, I'm not so sure. We have a place we want to be, right? There's 1,000 different ways to get from point A to point B, right? I need to know what the options are before I start going before the town to try to invest the money in a system like this, right? Because we wanna ultimately get to that goal, right? It may not be a straight line though. It may be, okay, in order to get 10% more surety in the system, or 20% more surety in the system, this is step one, all right? Step two is to get to 50%, it's gonna be a journey. I mean, I can't see, as a taxpayer, never mind as a town official, supporting something like this on the floor in this short period of time. So we need to have our ducks in a row, we need to be able to explain it to the taxpayers, how we're gonna get there. Nobody's gonna wanna foot that bill these days. Right now, economically, right, we don't know where our funding's coming from. 6 months, 9 months from now. I don't know, right? Yeah, we can borrow money. It's the worst thing you can possibly do right now, right, is to borrow money, because you don't know where the interest rates are gonna be 6 months from now, right? We need to put a plan together to get you where you wanna be, but it's not gonna be, jumping over this little brook, because we're dealing with jumping over a river at this point, we're not gonna make it. So, I mean, while you're dealing and looking at the project, how would I get there? Say it's a 5-year plan to get from point A to point B. Year 1 is this, year 2 is this, year 3 is this, year 4 is this, year 5 that.
So the unfortunate
Ultimately, the
part-
goal is here, you don't wanna reinvest in some of the equipment, so you wanna be going towards.
The unfortunate part of this is the equipment you have being end of life and being unable to get parts from the manufacturer that you have. Can't upgrade that stuff. Can't take the equipment that you currently have out on the market now and marry it to that. It doesn't work that way. It's unfortunate, but it doesn't.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
Now, we know we're in a rough situation right now.
Yep.
And I hear, and I get calls all the time, every time the system goes down. People that listen to the system, hey, the system just went down, radio, cops can't talk to dispatch anymore. So I'm hearing that stuff, and I'm hearing it going down. But at what point is this thing gonna fail on us, and we're not gonna have?
So what I brought up
And do we
earlier-
have a plan for that, guys? If it does fail, before we can do this?
Unfortunately, as I discussed before, it could very well be that if a phone line fails, especially for the police system, you call Verizon and have it fixed, they may just opt to end the line. And that ends that site until you figure out other backhaul. Which
Again,
gets
the two
expensive.
systems are inherently very different. With the phone line system is what makes me more nervous, because of what Craig just said, there could be a major problem with that. If we had a major failure of our system tomorrow, we could put another repeater up there and be operational again. A repeater's what, $5,000, $10,000, somewhere in that range?
Yeah.
So we could function at a pretty, you know, a reasonable, you know, amount of money and a quick turnaround, okay? We could do that. Their system is totally different. You know, so fire-wise, if we suffered a major outage, we would put another repeater in and we'd be operational again, but we're still gonna have the same coverage we have now. Their system, again, if it goes offline and they discontinue certain phone lines and everything like that, trying to get them back online would be a much bigger task.
Do you really think that the Verizon or whoever owns these phone lines would abandon us like that?
Absolutely.
Really?
They have.
I think I need another opinion, because I'm of the opposite opinion.
They did it in
Right?
Smithfield, Rhode Island, and Leominster, Mass. They did. They called for service on the line, and they said, we're no longer gonna support those lines, and they turned them off. They gave them a hard date to switch off to it. We're actually in the middle of a large microwave project for Leominster right now, specifically because of that.
So how long has Leominster been working with our phone lines?
Up until about 6 months ago.
And how are they functioning?
How are they functioning now? We emergency put in all new microwave. They've actually spent more on microwave for their sites, because they have 7 sites total, than the amount of this project.
So, another question, sorry. I'm trying to come up with solutions. And we do have 2 systems. We have fire and we have police. Police are in a dire situation. We know they're feeling. Chief, I'm not trying to sideline you or anything, but is there a chance we could take care of the cops first?
So
And then-
therein lies the rub. The rub is, most of what you gotta do is infrastructure, and then the rest of it is just a base station and a rack. So it's the cost difference is between doing a single channel system at 3 sites and a 2-channel system at 3 sites is really not that big.
Okay,
Maybe $30,000-$40,000.
not a $200,000 drop.
No,
So, the first plan was 2 sites,
correct.
and that was projected at $330,000.
Mhm.
The new proposal's 3 sites.
Yep.
And we doubled that price. How do we go from 2 sites to 3 sites at double the cost?
So again, we have some stuff that we just don't know right now that we had to account for. Again, sir, it's a ROM. It's all based on retail pricing. We don't have enough information from the other vendors that we need to engage to be able to whittle down everything we need in that project. Once we have that information, we can get that, again, I'll come back to the puzzle analogy. Once we start filling in that puzzle, and we have a few puzzle pieces less, that's our final number and our final product, product list, and that's when we can really pencil that number down to the absolute number you're looking for.
Would you have those answers in 2 weeks?
I can't tell you that because the other vendors are my problem. I can't negotiate a lease or any information with Industrial Communications on your behalf. That's something I can't do. You run into some collusion stuff, because they're also a radio shop. So we try to stay away from that, because we don't want any
So is that
malfeasance to show
something,
up.
Chief, you're working?
That's
They're
something
working
we're
on
trying to get going on, so we can have that discussion, and eventually, if it's a contract, it would have to come to the Board of Selectmen, yes. to
So
get to
how
that.
long before you?
Again, I've reached out, I'm waiting for them to get back to me. We reached out yesterday, I'm just waiting for a return call. I'll get on with them again tomorrow, so I'm hoping to get it as quickly as possible. We're trying to get as many questions answered as quickly as possible.
I know Mike is, Moriarty up at Rutland Regional is looking at mass broadband to see what they have for offerings from certain locations to help with backhaul. And again, these are all pieces of that puzzle that help us hone in on that final list of products we need to make this happen. And once that happens, then we can really sharpen the pencil and get you a final number.
So are we good with this system for a month, 2 months, 6 months?
Tough to say.
Let me ask a question a little bit differently. If the system went down tomorrow, how long would it take us to get up and running? Limping, I should say.
It depends on what happens. So the current system that the police have has a lot of moving parts to it. A lot of different vendors in the mix. You got Verizon supplying the telephone lines. You've got SBA, which is a tower company that owns Coy Hill. Hamden Communications. So it really depends. You got to engage those vendors. If it's an antenna problem, you go to them and they're like, okay, we'll schedule it for this. So it's really dependent on a lot of things. I can't give you an exact number or an exact timeline. It's just not possible.
So maybe I can try to help some direction on this. Through you, sir, to the gentleman here. If the system fails, you're talking, you could be talking days, you could be talking months, depending on what you're saying. But what we're talking about here, realistically, what's the time frame if the project from either a 2-site system or a 3-site system, what are we looking at for a time frame? Because we're gonna have a lapse of that time where we're gonna have to kind of cross our fingers and say, hope it doesn't go out. What's the time frame on the project? And then,
Once we have a penciled number and a PO is issued, I mean, we can start to work very quickly. Generally, you're looking at somewhere between 3 to 5 months for completion, because there's things you have to account for. If we have to send climbers up, if it's an inclement weather day, they're not going up. If you have a whole week that's like that, we can't send them up. We have to wait for good weather for things like that to happen.
Do they work on the towers in the wintertime, like when there's snow and stuff?
I can tell you, it's not a lot of fun. I used to climb towers myself. They do, but again, like when you're looking at a system installation and you've already, budgeted a number, to send them up in an inclement weather day, they're gonna want more money.
so sir, through you, from what I'm hearing, we can get to, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, we can get to current level and take advantage of having both fire and police taken care of with a 2-site system, but the goal is to get to 3. So should the board be given an option of a 2-site system, bear with me for a second, a 2-site system, that'll get us current and up to date with the plan to go for 3 within the next 3 years, or give us the whole hog, do it, and then as the town, we decide, do we go with the car that's gonna get us there, or do we go with the car that we know is gonna last more than the financing 10, 15 years out? That's kind of how, me as a voter, I look at it and say, okay, do I go and just get down the road, or do I go and I know I can make it cross-country?
And to key into that, that's typically how we tell everybody. You're looking at a 10-year ROI. So when we say 10 years, you get to year 10, we tell you to have a 5-year plan. So then you extend out, that's 15 years. Typically, you should get out of a well-constructed, well-engineered radio system, approximately 15 years. And again, I stress, well-engineered, well-constructed.
How many years are we at now?
8 years. And I think your equipment was discontinued in 2012, which means it was probably put in prior to that, so they're
We've been operating up there. We haven't,
12.
oh, it's more than that. That system's been in place probably 20 years.
So how is it,
Let me
their
just,
system's older,
Follow on for this.
And mine's the worst.
gentleman
How's
here.
that
and yours
work?
is worse?
Again, well-constructed, well-engineered.
But, and again, also, his system is, again, inherently different. A ton of different moving parts, 3 different sites. Ours is a single site, single repeated system. You're talking about a very technical system, so to speak, and a very simplified system. So, again, that's why replacing ours with another single repeater site would be pretty easy to do. But again, you're on private property and you're not fixing your gaps and your holes. So, but theirs, again, you're talking 3 towers or 3 different locations, multiple pieces of equipment, multiple repeaters. So it's a much more intricate site system.
So just to follow on what you were saying a second ago, it's not ultimately the board's decision.
No, I
Right.
understand, sir, yes.
And, I mean, it's gonna go on the floor, right?
Yes,
It's
sir.
definitely gonna go on the floor. The board really has, whether the board approves the article or a citizen puts it on the floor. It's not up to us. Our job here is to help educate the taxpayers and the townspeople that are gonna either support or deny the request.
No, I understand, sir. I'm more so saying, when it goes to the floor, if we're given, we have option A or option B, and what do those options look like? Again, you know, if we're saying this system's gonna take care of fire, take care of police, we're gonna be good for 10, 15 years, because this is a safety issue, and I think the town will recognize that when it, you know, being presented in that way. No one wants to hear that fire department can't talk to each other, or, you know, we had a missed distress call. I mean, I made that point in the last meeting, but at the same time, it's a big number. And no one's disagreeing that. Yes, fire chief and the police chief are gonna go for grants. We're gonna go try to get that number down as much as we can to off-burden, and then that should also be mentioned that when we look at it, yes, we hope, but here's what the pain point is. But if we have an option A and option B, which I think is what's in the works, and option A is, we're gonna put 2 systems in, we need to get to the third and to cover the town, and within a 5-year deal. I think that's the lesser wanting way to go, but a 3 system gets it done, then the town votes how they wanna vote.
And generally, if you try to split up phases like that, it ends up being more expensive phasing things out over several years, because manufacturers change price points. And we can't control that over the course of 3 to 5 years. There's just no way with that. We can say X vendor is gonna raise or lower their price. We don't know.
And my other question, one more thing, is with the 2 system, okay, we're gonna have gaps in the town for communication.
They estimate 90%, correct?
So we'll be at 90%
Roughly.
with a 10%.
10% dead spot. If you look at it this way.
Do we
I mean-
know where that dead spot would be?
Yes, generally speaking, yes.
Roughly.
So if you look at it this way, you know, to put it to people that don't understand radios, and I'm not a radio person, I know how to work with them, I know how the basics of them, but I'm not a technician by any way. So, I mean, again, a lot of this is foreign to me too, so please understand that. But a standalone system like ours, on the top of Coy Hill, Craig explained it the best way I've heard the analogy, okay? You take a coffee cup, you put it on the table, you shine a flashlight on it, everything on the backside of that cup that's dark is your dead spot. Everything around it is illuminated, all right? That's a standalone system. If you don't have anything on the other side of that cup catching the other dead area, those are dead spots. It's always gonna be your dead spots. For us, it's past the orchards, over the hill by the Seventh-day Adventist and the Mass Pike. That's where our system fails, because it comes down the valley. It goes out to the town for the most part, minus a couple places in West Warren. But as soon as it climbs the hill towards the Seventh-day Adventist school and starts down the hill by Cronin Road and the orchards, that's it, the light goes out. So by putting in a backup system, by having Southbridge Road, us on Southbridge Road, us on the fire station in West Warren, and us on the cell tower, you're covering all those points. That's why these communities now all have multiple point systems. There are no standalone repeater systems anymore. It just doesn't, unless a town is completely flat, has no elevation issues whatsoever,
Wyoming.
you're never going to get coverage, full coverage on a single repeater site. And that
So-
flashlight scenario is the only way I can explain it to anyone that doesn't know it, where those dark sides are gonna be.
No, it's a good analogy, Chief. But what neighborhood will we be missing?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What area
So,
will not be covered?
like a good chunk of West Warren, actually. Because the way the town geography is, you have a ridge running north-south, almost directly in the middle of town. And then you have kind of like an east-west from the top of Southbridge, I believe the orchards, I think that's where it starts to dip down back towards I-90.
Yep.
So you get a valley here, right through here, right in the center, goes down, then there's a crook in that, okay? So when you put a site over here, RF goes straight lines. Sometimes it bounces, but then you get a distorted signal, but RF goes in straight lines, it's all line of sight. The analogy of that flashlight, if you were to take, probably the best thing is if you had one of those nice raised topographical maps, something like that, but you could take a flashlight, put it at one of your sites, shine it in that direction, and you'll see all those spots that a site in West Warren would then catch the backside of those. That's basically how this system works. It's what they call a simulcast system. All 3 sites transmit on the same police or fire frequency at the same time. It's a saturation coverage.
I understand you explained it very well. I just wanted to know when it comes down to it, if we said, okay, we want a two-site system, who's being left out in the deal during that? And you're saying half of West Warren?
Good chunk of West Warren. Down that 67, out towards 67, and kind of where it turns and along the side. I think your school has down that road, there's some chunks of that road that are missing. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of
See,
it.
right now, we operate in those dead areas, and we always have been, like a lot of other communities, we have tactical channels that we operate on. So we'll switch off of our main repeater, and we operate on those tactical channels. The problem is that we've never had the repeater failure. That's the issue, is that, that's not something we've dealt with before. We know where the dead spots are, we've always dealt with them over the years, and we've always adapted and overcome, because we've had tactical channels and fireground channels and other things that we've been able to operate on. But we've never lost the system, and that's inherently where the problem was discovered most recently.
And the recent loss of system is a result of what?
Every one time it's happened, it's been due to severe weather.
Severe weather, and the result of that severe weather. I mean,
Yes.
we can say severe weather, right, but really, what was the underlying, the root cause of the failure? Was it because we lost power generation? Was it because?
A combination of a lot of
lost-
different things, and a loss of direct contact with Rutland itself. So, a straight line, whether it be an infrastructure end, on their end, a strike, but again, the other part of this study is based on, the numbers of this study from our current infrastructure are based on the best case operation of that system. You took it out of the package, this is the way it's supposed to operate right now. So those numbers are based on that, correct me if I'm
Correct.
wrong? Without getting into the system, without testing every little aspect of it, every little portable, you don't even know, that doesn't factor in the age of the radios that you're actually using or anything. This is strictly what the repeater is capable of putting out and what it should be operating at. So, adding on that life to those radios, you may be losing percentages there too. So, again, there's a few other factors in there, but having a two-repeater system, a two-site system, West Warren, Southbridge Road and the cell tower would be the two-site system. You wouldn't have the West Warren one, that would not be part of that two-site system, and you're looking at about 90% on portables at that point. Could you build on in a year or two? Yes, but prices are gonna change, and the other issue you have is you now have equipment that is this much old, and you have equipment that's now 3 years down the road older. You know what I'm saying? So there's advantages and disadvantages to doing it either way. And we're trying to present different options, as this gentleman said, and to present the best package to the town. Could it be done? Is it gonna fix the entire problem? No. Is it gonna make it better? Yeah, it is. It will.
Now, Chief, you brought up something, and we kind of touched on it too, the communication from us to Rutland Dispatch.
Yep.
What's going on there? What is actually happening that we keep on losing communication with Rutland?
They are currently transmitting into your system using what they call a control station. So they're basically like this portable here on your system, but up in Rutland, using an antenna pointed this way. So with that, if the police system fails, one of the phone lines goes down, the site can't hear them. And if the site can't hear them, they can't dispatch you. So this particular system design that we've proposed has a direct link from Rutland to here. So it's almost like they'd be sitting here in Rutland, here in Warren, dispatching you. They would have a direct link. That solves a lot of problems. It's also good for officer and firefighter safety, because they can get out messages by keying over users that are on the system. If somebody has an open mic, say they're sitting on their mic, they don't have the ability to key over the system.
They can't do that right now?
Nope. No.
So if somebody has an open mic, you guys,
We have to find it on our end. They can announce it. They'll announce that there's an open mic,
But you
Yeah,
probably
but they
won't hear
can't
'em.
discontinue it.
Yeah, you probably
Right.
won't hear them either, because a unit transmitting from this area is gonna have stronger signal into the system than them transmitting from up there to down here.
That's true.
So it provides a lot more tactical advantages, more safety,
Yes.
you know, things of that nature. Somebody, like, you can start using at that point, all of these radios have an orange button, and that is a man-down button. So chief here is getting shot at, he can push the button, and it opens up the microphone on that. It alerts the system and it alerts their console, so they can then call backup in. And they can talk.
Your
over-
radios currently send out the alert, right?
Yes.
All right.
And we also have ways to tone ourselves out. So in the events like tonight, when Rutland did go down, we actually put the tone out ourselves. So we have certain radios that have the capability of activating our system itself. So we can function as, you know, it's not an approved, state-approved dispatch center, but we have the ability to function in-house if we have to, like we've done before. And especially when you're being inundated with calls during a storm or something like that, we can physically tone our own, put out our own tones or anything like that. So we have control over that. God forbid there is a major failure. So that is built into our system. But this new proposed system, whether it's 2 or 3 sites, would eliminate really all of that, because it would fix all of the connection problems whatsoever between Rutland, between us, between the PD, what have you. It's not an antenna-based system, it's a microwave direct system.
Any questions from the audience here? Stanley?
I have 2 questions. One, if we're entertaining spending $500,000, how come we're only entertaining one quote? 2, I'm suggesting we call Verizon and find out if they would cut the cord on us, if that's fact efficient.
Those aren't questions. I'm looking for questions, because, trust me, there's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up before.
If I could just answer, especially the first one there. We didn't ask Rutland for a quote. That's not what this is. We didn't ask them for a quote. This is based on a radio study, an engineering study that was captured from a grant. This is the proposal of what we would need and the price that would be provided, you know, to basically obtain that system. It's not, we didn't go to Modular and ask them to quote us a system. They are the infrastructure engineers for Rutland, and they did it on behalf of a grant that was received from the state.
And the other part of that is, whenever you're in this phase, you're not entertaining quotes right now, you're trying to figure out your budget. And when that gets pared down and you get to go out to bid, then you go out to bid, you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7
Yes,
bids.
we're just not there yet. This is a
This
baseline
is very,
engineering
very,
study.
very early on in the process.
Thank you.
Mr. Kodak?
Yes, I've attended perhaps 3 meetings where this particular problem has been discussed. And in each of those meetings, Chief Beloy has been the, I would call it the point person. Is he, by way of my understanding, is he the chief person to contact relative to this particular problem?
Actually, it's a joint
Yeah,
endeavor between the 2 chiefs, right? There are safety people.
I apologize, I don't mean to, please, I don't mean to talk over Chief Millette. No, we're both actively involved in this. It just, you know, like I said, I mean, our system is a little different. I'm speaking mostly on behalf of the fire system, but I am aware of somewhat, you know, some of what they have on the police side. So no, I don't mean to make it, I don't mean to anyone to interpret that I'm at all in charge of this project. That's not the case. This has been a joint effort all along between both police and fire.
So at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, if the material hits the fan, who stands up and takes account for it? Is it a shared responsibility between the 2 chiefs? Or is it Mr. Millette, Chief Millette? I mean, Chief Beloy?
If it hits the fan, we all do. It's, I mean, what got us here, Jim, I can't answer the question, but we're in a position right now that, yeah, we need a lot more answers. And every meeting is getting us closer, but not where I want to be personally. I still don't think we have enough information. I know we have a study, right? In a matter of a couple days, we went from 300,000 to over 500,000, right? So there's still a lot of questions I have, and I mean, I asked a lot of them here tonight, but I'm still looking for options, right? Yeah, there's the two system or the three system, but really, what else is in between that, right? We need to keep our emergency services running, right? How do we keep them running while we figure out how the heck we're gonna pay for this?
Is there a Band-Aid for this?
The easy ones, to be honest. About the only part of the system that we can currently get parts for, especially on the police side, is a device that's housed down at the police station called a JPS SNV12. It's what they call a voter. The company still currently makes cards for that, but that is realistically the only piece of your system that we can still get parts for. Everything else, we can't. Could source from a used market probably, but then you're buying somebody else's problem because they got rid of it for a reason.
Did have one more question, sir. Would the new antenna systems allow, Chief Millett, allow you to talk to Braintree, allow you to talk to the other surrounding towns if you need to call for mutual aid direct, as well as fire chief, if you, the same for you, if you tone out for a second or a third. Will the new system allow
Different
both
bands?
of you? Yeah, for bands and for direct communication. So if West Brookfield comes in, because officers need help, they can jump on our system, is that gonna allow
If they're.
further communication?
Well,
Yeah,
it's still
it's all
gonna, it's still
different.
gonna be a VHF system. It's still gonna be it's still gonna function on a VHF frequency. Meaning that, you know, we're not changing the scope of our frequencies or anything like that. What does change is that we will have, you know, what we're hoping to gain out of this is, you know, tri-band radios that do have the ability to do 800 UHF, VHF. You know, that was one of the advantages of going to Rutland, because we thought we were gonna have to change to a UHF to match the other 4 towns that were on there. That wasn't the case. We're the only ones that function on a VHF system, which was convenient for us because we didn't have to switch anything, so.
That's what we've been looking for grants to.
Yeah,
to
so,
get radios,
you know,
but
they're,
tri-band.
and inherently, without getting too technical, we will not lose any ability to switch to different channels, but by having tri-band, those tri-band radios, not that we really would ever use them, we don't switch that often, but, you know, nothing is gonna change from our operational standpoint. We have all of our fire district, all of our local communities operate on VHF channels, so it's as simple as changing the channel knob, and we're gonna still be able to talk.
So but wasn't there an issue that was raised last time that state police, if they come into town?
They work on an 800 system, so currently they don't have the capability of being able to switch over to an 800 system. However, with a tri-band radio, they would be able to do that.
And that's gonna be chased through grants, but allowing the infrastructure to be upgraded will allow that
Correct.
eventually.
Getting grants and getting the equipment that we've had come through Rutland, you know, that's the next phase, is that all of the officers and fire and police are supposed to be getting tri-band radios, which would give us the ability to switch to 800 UHF or VHF.
So we're setting ourselves up properly for that next step, so this is.
That's correct.
Like a capital
That's something
planning.
we're currently working on, but it's not really part of the infrastructure per se.
Yeah.
That's more of a side piece of a portable radio.
But it would be a
Yes,
benefit.
like right now, in my cruiser, I can talk to, I have a separate radio for each frequency, so I have that in there. They don't carry that in their cruisers. But I have to live in that world because I have towns that are VHF, UHF, that were fire mutual aid partners.
Mhm.
So I have a different setup than they do inherently in their cruisers, but it's not on one radio. I have a VHF, a UHF, a low band, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, I
No,
have
I
5
understand
antennas
that.
on my cruiser. So.
I guess the question, to simplify this, putting the infrastructure in now, there's an added side benefit for down the road of being able to have better communications with other agencies.
Correct, yes. It would be, yes. Yeah, that's the short answer to that is yes, without getting into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rutland's working on a grant for new radios that are tri-band. So that would give us the ability to talk to,
So if state comes in, or you gotta talk to the chopper or whatever, the infrastructure.
well, chopper's different when they come in,
Well,
they go on our VTACs. and-
But you kinda know what I'm saying. We're setting ourselves up in a better spot now for that eventuality down the road. Even though it's a pain point money-wise now, we're still setting ourselves up for a better future.
That's what we're hoping, I guess.
So I guess to answer the chairman's question, I don't know what other options or scenarios to present to the board at this point. You're not gonna get a standalone one system thing. So your issue is looking at a two system or a three system build out. I mean.
No, I mean, let's face it, there are other options, Adam, and I don't wanna shut you down, right? And I wish Mr. Moriarty was here from Rutland, because, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is our ability to communicate with Rutland and communicate back, right? That wasn't an issue a couple of years ago, right? It is today, right? So would it be more cost effective for the town to go standalone again, or continue on with the regional and invest this kind of money? This was not on the table to invest in a regional dispatch center, right? It was attractive for us, it was attractive for Rutland, we decided to go with it, right? But I heard stories today about, Rutland not even answering our phone calls anymore because they're overbooked, right? That's not part of the regional agreement. They still need to provide that service, whether we're swamping them with calls or not, because everybody was swamping them with calls. But to redirect the calls back to the PD or fire department, that put us back where we had our own dispatch center.
That's always the emergency fallback, though. That's actually part of state plan.
Understood, right, but being forced in that kind of position when we have communication problems with Rutland to begin with, if that's the bottom line, if that's what's driving all of this, I don't know.
I don't think
look
that's
out to the experts in the room to help me.
I don't think that's the typical problem. I think they're more concerned about the dead spots and the ability to be able to call for help when needed in those areas.
But we've dealt with dead spots, we all deal with dead spots. I mean, let's face it, the topography of Warren, it's not the worst in the state, it's not the best in the state, but we do have valleys and hills. And with radio signals, we know how radio signals work with hills. I mean, if you've ever been a ham operator, you know.
I actually am, sir.
Okay, you know what you have to deal with, right? So it's nothing new.
But speaking from a firefighter standpoint myself, I'm in a dead spot, I'm dead, is basically what it comes down to. If I need help, I can't push the button and get help, I'm dead.
Right, if I fall down in my bathroom and hit my head and can't use my cell phone to get help, I'm dead too. I mean,
Exactly.
the situations, right?
But one can be solved by the town doing what they need to do, and the other one's a paid entity, Verizon, AT&T, they're out to make money. There's different things.
Anybody in a business is out to make money. That's why it's a business.
So, I just wanted to touch on something. The chairman brought up a good point, we were discussing this earlier, is we did have a concern with Rutland too, because we're paying Rutland to provide a service to us and receive dispatch and be able to dispatch our firefighters and officers, especially in an emergency, and especially when things start going wrong, okay, we have a big storm. That's when we rely most on the dispatch center, and that's when we need them. And to hear things that they're redirecting us and saying, asking us to handle our own calls because they're being overwhelmed with their own calls in their town, that doesn't make me feel good about.
I'm not gonna speak
Let me
to
just
that
hold on
specific
for a second,
situation, but I
because
can.
it's another topic totally, and we shouldn't be going down that
Yeah.
road right now.
But I can speak a little bit to it.
Mr. Murray should have been here tonight, he was planned to be here, and without him being here, we shouldn't go down that road and have any discussion, because he's not here to give us his side, right? So, and we should allow him that opportunity, especially when we're on camera. I don't wanna sit here and badmouth Rutland or anything else. It's an issue that came to our attention. It's an issue that came up tonight about our ability to communicate with Rutland back and forth. So it is part of this, right? So we need to understand that more as well.
Yep.
And make sure that we're covering all our bases. So I think at this point in time, right, there's been a lot of questions asked, right? We haven't got a lot of
Answers.
good answers. I mean, we've heard, well, that's the high ball price, but then that doesn't include generators and stuff like that. So this isn't the high ball price, this is not the cost of the project. The cost of the project is everything that's entailed in getting these sites up and running, whether it be a two-site, three-site, whatever it is, there's other costs that are gonna be incurred in order to get us there. You don't wanna put this kind of system in and not have the power there when we have a power failure, right? So that is part of this. It's outside the scope of what you're doing, right? But it's within the scope of the project. And that needs to be addressed as well. So we need to understand what the total cost of this is going to be.
One of the things I highly suggest you do is get a communications consultant. They're gonna be the ones that are gonna help you write the grant. They're gonna be the ones that help you whittle down, and that'd be somebody that you can use to engage, say, industrial communications. We can point you in the direction of several good communications consultants, and that's all they do. And that is specifically kind of the best way forward for you.
I
They're gonna be
understand
the
that,
ones
but I also
that-
have concerns in the town here that we have an obligation to keep our residents safe, right?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
That's why the questions came up is, what can we do in order to stabilize right now? Because I can't afford to have my police and fire department go black 2 weeks in a row, right? It's just not good for the town, right? Well, we can't communicate, the EMS services can't communicate with one another, the residents can't communicate with them. That's a big problem, and we need to address that problem as soon as possible, if not sooner, right? I understand where you're coming with the proposal and what it does for us, but that's 6 months down the road. What do I do in the meantime, in
It's,
the near future, right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Dufresne?
Yes.
As he stated earlier, are there Band-Aids? That's all you have. And it could be, like the police, they have a primary and a backup transmit site. So if their primary transmit site goes down, really, since we can't get replacement equipment, it's going and robbing the backup transmitter and moving it over to their primary site. But that leaves them now without a backup transmitter. So you can start to see, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, is kind of where we end up with on his system. On the fire system, like Chief said, it's a single site. It's a single site. If we needed to slap in a repeater, sure, could we? We could. And it doesn't solve all their other problems, but it still puts them back up on the air. It's all Band-Aids at that point. So, can we limp it along? We're always gonna be able to limp it along. That's, if you called us, we would find a way to make something work.
Regardless
It's
of
what we
which
do.
path we go, though, I think we have to limp it along until, we talk, you talk from first shovel in the ground to fruition of the project. 6 months minimum, right?
About 6 months.
We haven't even approved the money yet, right? So we still have to schedule a meeting in front of the townspeople to get approval to appropriate, whichever way, to spend that money. So you're adding another month or two onto that, right? Because we don't even have a number yet to go in front of the town and say, this is what the project's gonna cost us. So we can't even, in good faith, talk to the taxpayers and the citizens saying, hey, this is what it's gonna cost you.
So,
Cost overruns and project scope creep and all that stuff is gonna,
so that's why I say get a good communications consultant, because they're gonna be the ones that will engage generator folks. They're gonna be the ones that are going to engage industrial communications for you, because they'll be able to speak on your behalf at that point. They'll be able to negotiate that information and those leases for you guys to sign. That's where they come in. They're gonna be the ones that are gonna congeal all that information for you and get you to where you're looking to be.
So what's the typical price for a consultant?
I can't tell you that. I honestly don't know.
5, 10, 15?
I honestly don't know.
It's another question we're gonna have to have answered, David, so,
I'm just trying to see, he's in this field, so.
Yeah,
if he has any
I'm not a
insight.
consultant, so that I don't know
I'm just
their
trying
pricing.
to prepare us for another Another number.
I don't know, but I can tell you it's money well spent, and by the end of a project, it will have paid for itself many times over.
Besides the fact, Mr. Chairman, now you're talking about so many ifs and getting an exact price and this and that you have to realize you're doing construction in the middle of winter in New England, which at some point could basically be shut right down. So you're looking at March.
Yep.
Even if we had the money today,
Yep,
you're looking at March before you put the shovel in.
yep. I have many projects that have gotten delayed.
Besides the fact of, like both David and John said, we're looking to fill that gap until we get to that point. We're not looking at a 2-month gap, we're looking at a 6 or 7 or 8-month gap.
Yep. And like I
Something
said,
has to be done
if you
between
call
now
us to repair it,
and March.
we would
so
find a way.
They can do their job and we can keep the taxpayers safe.
Yep.
And Carrie was looking at, I see her hand about 2 or 3
Yeah.
times.
Oh, she's hiding behind
She's
Stan.
back behind.
I was just wondering if, so you were saying that the state gives grants to people who are in emergency situations, like it's not a competitive thing so much as, oh, their turnout gear is 5 years expired. Are we in that kind of
Well,
situation?
no, I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I was saying. We're talking the grants I was talking about are for fire equipment. They're not radio grant. I was simply just trying to say that, in my opinion, the grants have changed over the years, where it used to be, oh, you have a really unique project, that's really, you put a lot of thought into it, we'll give you a grant for it, you know? Now it's everybody applies for an SCBA air pack grant, and the guy that neglected their system the most gets it, because they have to give it to him. You know, that's not the way it was supposed to go. And that's the frustrating part about it, because that's the world we're living in, and it's very frustrating to see other neighboring towns, oh, great, they got a $250,000 grant. What the fine print doesn't say is that their system was unserviceable, and their system was not maintained for, 15 years for their packs or whatever. It doesn't say that in the article. It just simply says that they got a $250,000 grant, and then you have residents coming to myself and Jerry going, why didn't you get that? And it's like, because our stuff still has 10 years and we've been maintaining it the right way. That's the frustrating part, as I was trying to allude to. So it sounds like, I would like Mr. Moriarty to come, to sit and to answer maybe some of the questions from the Rutland side. I want to just, again, I just want to clear the air and just simply say, we did not come here to irritate anybody, we did not come here to upset anybody. We got this numbers the same time that the board did, just before that, we forwarded them. So we're trying to wrap our heads around the scope of the project and what we can do with it. We're not looking to bankrupt the town by any means, shape, or form. We're just trying to, as the chairman said, we don't have capital planning, we don't have finance, so we're coming before the board to present our options. So, yes, we understand it's gonna be a time frame. We get that. I just wanna make sure that the town is aware of what the issues are at this point, so that we don't drag our feet to the point where we're 3 years out and still haven't done anything about it, okay? Again, they will Band-Aid it, there are things we can do to limp things along, but at the end of the day, the infrastructure was existing before Rutland, and it would still be existing if we weren't with Rutland, so one way or the other, we're gonna have to update it at some point. And that's all we're trying to do, is to try to formulate a plan to do that part.
Yeah, but we gotta realize too, we understand this is a critical need. We're talking about when we could schedule a special town meeting, what article would be on there, what the price of that article was, and get it out on the floor before our annual, right? I mean, we still don't have the information we need to even schedule that meeting yet. And, so I need to make sure that the town itself is covered over the period of time it's going to take us to get this ball rolling, right? Right now, you talk to residents and they got a little fear in them right now. I mean, it's bad enough they're facing all the COVID stuff, right? But now they're facing the panic that communications could go down at any point in time, and how our emergency service is gonna respond. We need to address that, one way or another.
I understand. I can, if it's any reassurance at all, we are not gonna not respond. We will respond. We will always.
If you can't hear them, how are you gonna respond?
Because
That's the problem.
again, as you said, some of these dead areas we've always adapted to with different ways to do that. Was it ideal? No, but we always have, and we will continue to do that. We have ways to self-dispatch if we have to. The issue is our system's not really designed to do that, however it will. You know, but again, you know, we still have to address that somehow, some way down the road. That's all, I just don't want to lose sight of that, just because I understand it, I get it, I understand the costs related to it, but, you know, we have had those failures, so we do have to consider that, you know, we have to move on this at some point. You know, and how we do that is the question.
Just, I would propose that at the next meeting we have, which we'll have to have another meeting relatively quickly, just to keep this rolling along, is that we present to the townspeople, because it's an open meeting, exactly what the backup plan is to cover us through this situation. It's oh my God, the sky is falling. You know, we need to be able to assure them that, yeah, we have a plan to mitigate the disaster, right? So we just need to assure them that, yeah, we have the resources to handle it. We understand that we're holding together with pins and needles. We understand that we have a long-term plan and goal and how we're gonna get there, right? But we also need to assure them that during that period of decision, we will be balanced, right? So how are we gonna do that? And that's what I need to know. Because if it costs me $30,000 to make sure my residents are safe versus going to the floor and having something done 6, 9 months, a year from now, these are two different situations, right? Because regardless of what we do, we're still gonna need a backup plan to carry us through until, if we go with this plan, until it comes to fruition, because we got a period of at least 9 months, the way I look at it.
Like I said, we'll provide as many of those answers as quickly as possible, and we'll ask Mike to come in, and you can certainly ask him questions on the Rutland side of things, you know, and we'll continue to work on it as we have. You know, that's, again, this is something that we're scrambling and reacting to due to the recent circumstances, so, I mean, you know, that's, you know, unfortunately, we're trying to play catch-up as well, so we'll provide that to the board as quickly as possible.
What I'd like to ask both of you guys to do, because you both have people in the field that deal with this on a daily basis, as far as the communication consultant goes or whatnot, reach out to your neighboring friendly departments and see if they have any suggestions on who we can get a hold of. And then we can contact them and find out what the costs associated with getting them in here. And looking at this whole project, and I mean, this type of stuff requires somebody with, you know, project management skills in order to drive it through and pull all these loose ends together to make sure that we can tie the shoe at the end of the day, right? So we're gonna need somebody to coordinate it. You know, I don't have the expertise in it.
I don't either, so
David doesn't have the expertise in it. We're not the experts, right? We rely on our department heads to feed us enough information so we can react to it. That reaction right now, and I agree, that maybe get a
I think that would be the link that we need.
To help guide us down the road to get this thing rolling.
I can also provide them with a list of 5 or 6 that we don't work with, but that we've worked with in projects that we've done.
That'd be great.
And they've been very helpful.
And this is not a bang up on you or anything, this is just trying to get information.
I would
out
prefer
there.
it if you had a communications consultant that would kind of be able to give you that information. That means you're better informed. And that's what we want, because if you're better informed, you know what you're looking for, you know what to provide, and we can kind of put all that together better.
Thanks for coming and taking all the
Not a
heat
problem.
from us, appreciate it.
If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free, get them to the chiefs, and they'll get them to me, and I'd be happy to answer them.
There are 2 POCs right now. I mean, it's a town issue, but it's their departments that are affected right now, and the residents, but they know more about the situation than I do.
No, this has been a learning process for everybody. I mean, it's something you don't think of, and I mean, look, you know, when your radios are working, you don't poke the bear. You know, you change your batteries out, you have a yearly test, everything's good. When you approach a project like this, and there's a major failure, there's a major price tag that comes with it. So, you know, again, that's not something that, you know, we're way behind in fire trucks, we're way behind in police cars. There are other needs that we focus on day to day that are more important to us because we don't think of the radio system stuff because it's just something that exists. But when it does start to have problems and you start to see what the end of life looks like and you start to see while the technology is amazing out there and it's come such a long way, the life expectancy is not huge on it. I mean, you're talking 10 years, with a 5-year build-out, so 15 years, I mean, that's not a whole lot of time when you're spending that kind of money, you know what I mean? But unfortunately, with public safety the way it is, with them having to communicate, especially with what's going on in our world and our country, and everything, I mean, it's essential. I mean, it is what it is. So again, this is something that, this is the kind of the worst case scenario for us with regard to how it has played out. I wish they had a simple system like we did, because it'd be easier to Band-Aid. It's a simple thing, but, for them, it was a totally different design system, and with that comes a lot more expensive Band-Aids, and working between the two systems is and finding a way to limp it through is gonna be the challenge.
And I would also suggest that, we talk about the two departments here, but there's a third department involved here as well. It's the highway department. We need to involve them in this as well, because technically, you all should be on the same system, so that when you go out on the road on a call or something, and they send the ambulance out and they can't get down this road because of the tree that is down and stuff, we need to be able to respond to that as well. So whatever plan we look at should cover the three departments that have the majority of the communication issues in town.
So we're about to do something very similar for Rutland Regional up there. Put in basically a system-wide DPW channel that is simulcast across all the same sites to do just that, and that is actually a very smart thing. And like I said earlier, the price difference between a 1-channel and 2-channel, not very big. Difference between a 1-channel and a 3-channel, still not very big, because it's all the supporting equipment behind those base stations that's the more expensive stuff. So if adding that 3rd channel, and that allows you, say you have a mass incident in town, you can dump all that incident stuff off to that 1 channel and still have your other 2 channels free to do dispatch for other stuff.
The highways system works identical to ours. They're at the same site we are. In fact, they just put theirs up there not long ago. The resident up there allowed them to go up there, so they're on a standalone repeater site just like we are. This particular site would allow, this particular plan would allow them in an emergency to get onto our frequencies and work with us, which is exactly what we've done in the last few storms. They've worked on ours, and it's worked out better. The 2 storms ago, everybody switched to the fire department repeater because it was the only one that was functioning properly, at the time. So, again, we adapt and overcome as we need to. This has just been the first time, certainly in my experience, certainly in Chief Millet's experience, where we've lost the infrastructure altogether due to a couple of issues. So certainly there can be things to talk about with Rutland and see if there's any other way to make a stronger signal between it. I don't know. I'm not a technician. I don't know what that conversation will bring. But at the end of the day, what we see in front of us here, whether it's 2, 3, however, what we see, we're gonna have to go in that direction to get there at some point, is all I'm saying, is that, the current setup we have, is just antiquated, and it has to be updated at some point and in some way.
Any other questions? Then I'll await a motion.
Do we want to set another meeting, or?
Yeah, but I don't know how long it's gonna take then.
Well,
We're
our
gonna have
next
to wait
regular
for-
meeting's the 22nd. I don't know if that's too far out for you guys, or if that gives you enough time, or?
I think this is a big enough issue that it belongs on an agenda on its own, so that we shouldn't burden our weekly.
I would ask that we have at least 2 weeks to do some legwork on it, to try to get as many answers as we can. I think 1 week would be a little bit too short of a window.
I don't think
Adam,
2 weeks may be a little
how about-
short.
How about, you and I will talk, or the 3 of us will talk?
Yeah, that's fine. Why don't we,
Check this.
in the next couple days, we should know more about when information is coming back, so we can reach out very quickly and see if we can't schedule with the board, and figure out when the closest date we can, that we can get other parties in the room and figure out where we need to go with that.
So, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
you know.
That's
And
fine.
then I'll get the guys scheduled.
We understand the concern, believe me, gentlemen, you know, we certainly didn't come here tonight to anger anybody, we're just trying to put all the cards on the table and explain where their
I don't
issues.
think it's a matter of anger, I think it's more of a matter of shell shock.
Oh, like I said, I was there 2 hours ago. You know, that's why we called Craig in to come and talk with us, because we didn't understand how it went from this to this. But after sitting down and talking about it, I have a better understanding as to where those varying factors are and how that could change. And I understand in his line of work, he has to build it out to every possible scenario, you know, and I get that. I totally understand that. So, you know, and I respect that. So, you know, understanding it a little bit better now, and I get it. It's angering, it's frustrating, but, you know, once you come off of that plateau and that step, once you are over that, it's easier to understand the adjustments and the different pieces that are at play.
Because that's what it was from here, it was just basic sticker shock. I
Yeah.
think we were all just, what?
No,
A lot of the things in the report were shocking to me. I mean, I didn't realize that we had, you know, West Warren, one of the lights there, we had an antenna up on Alvarez building. I didn't realize before that we had on somebody else's property up on Coy Hill, another tower
Yeah.
that
These systems were,
we didn't
honestly,
have
you know,
access to. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
enlightening stuff coming up here, so don't get me wrong, the information is good. You gotta work with what you're dealt with, but it does need to change.
you know, and I agree, and that's my biggest push is that, you know, both myself and Chief Millette have been here for 14 years. You know, we've been here long enough to know how the town works, to know where the complaints are gonna come from, to know where the concerns are gonna come from. We know all that, okay? You know, a lot of this stuff was dealt where, you know, these systems were inherently, they were there before we ever came to this town. And a lot of these were wink, wink, handshake between property owners and, hey, you let us put an antenna here and we'll, you know, that'll work for us and thank you very much. I mean, unfortunately, those things are fine 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, even 15 years ago. But nowadays, the liability and the concern and stuff, to have that kind of stuff, you know, it just needs to stop. That kind of stuff, it needs to be dealt with and fixed once and for all, and that's kind of where we are right now.
So, you still wait on motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn here, Mr. Chairman.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank
Sorry
you
for
all.
putting you through a lot of this, but